Om Vijnanatipidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances to him. So, good. Hi Krishna. Good evening, everyone. Happy to see all of you here. Looks like they left me up here by myself. Anyways. So yeah, this evening what I'll do is I'll share a verse with you all. And this is from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Chapter 6, entitled Dhyana Yoga, and verse 8. Here you go, Bhagavad Gita. We have some up there if you don't have any. If you don't have one, put the table there. Also, this house here, the door's open. There's a bathroom there if anybody needs to use it. All right, so here's the verse. So you have to pay very close attention because it's a short verse, and if you don't pay very close attention, you might just miss it. So I have to pay close attention too because I might miss it as well. Okay, so here it is. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. They see everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. All right, so we'll read it again. A person is said to be established in self-realization. Now, when this particular verse says he, it's referring to everybody. So, it's just how it's written. All right. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. They see everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. It's equal vision. So, you know anybody like that? Who sees pebbles, stones, or gold the same? It's kind of a bit of a high order, but... So in relation to that, throughout this discussion, I'll ask you all a few questions, so please cooperate by answering them. So the first, it's an easy question, so the first question is, who is the most wealthiest person in this world right now? What was that? Okay. Yeah, financial. Yeah. Who's that? I'm just joking. Everybody knows that guy. Mr. Amazon, right? Everybody and their mother knows that guy. So, he's the most wealthiest person in the world. All right. So, now the second question. Who's the second most wealthiest person in the world? Huh? Oh, you're pretty good. No, it's okay. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. Huh? You thought he was the fifth? No, that's okay. The poorest? Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll discuss that more. Not exactly in relation to him, but... now there's one particular definition of wealth. They say that that wealth is measured by how many things you have that money can't buy, right? So wealth is measured by how many things we have that money can't buy. how many valuable things we have that money can't buy. Now what could that be referring to? What are some valuable things that we may have that money can't buy? Any ideas? Love. You said soul? Yeah, soul, love. What is it? Relationships, kindness, peace, right? Happiness, spiritual experience, yeah. Gravity, yeah. So there was one wealthy guy, forgetting his name right now. Anyways, yeah, John Paul Getty, that was his name. At the particular time in the world, he was one of the wealthiest guys. He was an American fellow, and he had a particular statement. He like categorized people into two categories. It's kind of strange categories he categorized people in, but the two categories were: there's people that you pay to stay with you, and there's people that you pay to stay away from you. That was his categories. Now I asked somebody about that because I didn't fully completely grasp that idea that there's people you pay to stay away from you, and there's people you pay to stay with you. So now, of course, people you pay to stay away from you. Any ideas about that? Creditors. Huh? Creditors. Yeah, creditors, yeah, tax collectors, yeah, and so on. But specifically, my friend, he commented on this particular point, this idea of people you pay to stay with you. And he gave an interesting example. The example he gave was that there was a very nice, lady, a mother and a grandmother. And what she did is she made her house, one of the rooms in her house, into an arcade. Of course, this was many years ago, but I guess people still like arcades, but kids and people still like arcades, but right? People still like arcades? No, still. So she made her house, or one of her rooms, into an arcade. Now, why did she do that? So her grandchildren would come over. And she told my friend that, yeah, if I didn't make this, they wouldn't come over. So in one way she was, in a sense, you could see how that relates. And there's other ways too it relates, I guess. People you pay to stay away from, people who pay to stay with you. But it's a sad conception, actually. So now based on the conception of how many valuable things, real wealth means how many valuable things we have that money can't buy. Now, who's the most wealthiest person in the world in that regard? Does anybody know? It's hard to say, right? They don't put that online. What about you? You know, who's the most wealthiest person in relation to having valuable things that money can't buy? Okay, it's hard to say, right? So we could see that based on this, we could see you could say the value system of this world, right? A lot of it's about money. Now, in relation to both of these groups, whether you have a spiritually wealthy person or whether you have a materially wealthy person, they have two things in common. And and that thing that they have in common is that no matter how little money they pay or however much money they pay, they can't stop the force of time. In other words, there's a certain amount of time, right? We have, and no matter how wealthy spiritually or materially or poor materially or spiritually we are, we can't buy back time. It's just time wasted can't be retrieved. So what does that mean? It means that we should try to figure out. Of course, we can do whatever we want, but we should try to figure out what is the most valuable way to use our time. And from the spiritual perspective, the idea is that we should focus on spiritual realization or advancing spiritually. This is the most valuable thing to do with our time. And sometimes people say, oh, that sounds really dogmatic, that sounds really religious, that sounds really sentimental, right? Well, if everybody's after happiness, which the last time I checked, everybody's after happiness. Okay, so we could agree on that. Everybody's after happiness, for the most part, right? Everybody's after happiness. So if that's the goal, and we could see by looking at the world largely that everybody, practically speaking, is focusing on material aspirations or material goals, and we could see practically that throughout the whole world there hasn't been a huge increase in happiness over the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, then a intelligent conclusion would be that, hey, well, maybe we should try something different. They say that, what's that? The definition of insanity is to keep on trying the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So, so the idea is that this world, it's a perfect example of thousands and millions of people, billions of people trying to fulfill their materialistic aspirations and desires and so on, but still not being happy. So, understanding that conclusion, then, okay, then what do? Well, we focus on spiritual advancement or progress. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to join a temple like I did or like others who are here did. But it just means to set aside some time for our spiritual progress every day. Just like, I don't know what that guy's yelling about. You hear him? Nice. Just like, okay, you have a jar, a glass jar, which I'm sure everybody's heard many times, and if you're completely disgusted by this example, maybe you heard it so many times, but you have a glass jar, okay, and then you have sand, and then you have some rocks. So you got to fit the rocks and the sand in the same jar. So which one do you put in first? Do you put the rocks, or do you put the sand? Why? Yeah, so the rocks are there, and then with the, fill up sand, right? Okay. I'm going to ask you a more difficult question. That one's pretty easy. I'll have to come up with a more difficult question. So, now, what are the rocks and what is the sand in this particular analogy? Well, it depends who we are, right? I guess. In other words, we should put we should focus on the most important things first, and then all the other things will fall in place. So, from a spiritual perspective, the most important things is, for example, like around here, we're chanting Hare Krishna, mantra meditation, or reading the Bhagavad Gita, or doing so many things like that. So these are, you could say, spiritual practices that dramatically elevate one's consciousness and change one's consciousness for the better. So the idea is to, in that jar of time, right, to first focus on spiritual development, and then all the other stuff works out. Whereas sometimes we mistake material like economic development or fulfilling, biological urges as the most important thing in our lives. We take that as the rocks. We fill up the jar, and then maybe we'll put some sand in there, some spiritual, practices or activities. So yeah, in conclusion, the idea is that we should at least consider these things, at least consider them. They have some idea that we're only using a certain amount of our brain, right? Scientifically, we're only using a certain amount of our brain. I don't know, how much is it? 10%, is it? Okay. You said 5? All right, 5, 10, 2, something like that. Depends on the person. Yeah. Somebody gave me a birthday gift the other day, and it was they were devotee children, but they gave me this. It's like a little case, and in the case there was some headphones. So on that case it said 80% of my brain is lyrics. They gave that to me. And then Mukunda, who is now on the East Coast, he just left today to see his guru. Won't be back for some months, so you could start missing him if you want. But he was joking, and he said to me, because we were together, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting that you gave Balaram this particular case that said 80% of your brain is lyrics, because out of everyone in the ashram, he's probably one of the ones that have the least lyrics in his brain, from different songs of the past and stuff." And then someone commented, "Yeah, he has Hare Krishna lyrics, in his brain." Anyways, whatever. I try to have that going on in my brain. So yeah, we only use a certain amount of our brain. So what we should do, the idea that the Bhagavad Gita is proposing is that what we should do with the human brain is we should try to utilize it to at least consider these things, to at least consider them. Because again, sometimes people, they just like to reject or throw away certain ideas or conceptions without thinking about them, like deeply. Like, for example, the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, it's quite a book, and yeah, it's an amazing book. And there's so much commentary, right, on this particular Bhagavad Gita. The chanting of Hare Krishna, of course, it's 3 words, but there's a lot there, actually. Spiritually, it's very deep. So I tonight just humbly encourage everyone in the audience that to at least consider deeply thinking about these different things and trying out the practice, and that will be, we could say, beneficial for us. It's starting to rain on. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Slightly. Yes, sir.
Thanks very much for your talk. Not a lot covered, like content-wise, but what was covered, like, hit me. A lot of content, very powerful content. And the last thing you're talking about, the last thing you mentioned about a lot of people look at things and don't take them. I don't know the exact. I'm paraphrasing it, but disregard them. Do you think a reason for that is some of these things, especially in spiritual terms, if they think about them a little bit, they soon realize it's going to require some devotion. And devotion requires at least some degree of sacrifice. And that, the way I see it, is almost the opposite of Maya, where there's no sacrifice, you're trying to, and then devotion, Krishna, is sacrifice. So I think, is it possible that the reason they disregard it is because they have an inherent sense, consciously or subconsciously, that they don't want to sacrifice and they don't want to devote themselves enough to that thing, so they just disregard it or find fault in it or find a reason not to pursue it. You don't understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right, thank you. So much of what we there's many things going on. I mean, how we were raised, right? We're all raised in a particular way, a certain educational system, materially, spiritually, right? Certain parents or caretakers, right? So there's a lot of different influences, influencing us. But yeah, it is true that the thing is we're all dedicated. Now, what should we do about this rain? To tell you the truth, I'm just thinking about the rain. I don't know what we should do. Should we, like, maybe we should go in the temple room, or go into the temple room? Okay, so everybody could just go to the temple room. And also, we're going to wrap up this talk very shortly, and then we're going to serve dinner. So if everybody could please stay with us. But yeah, if everybody could just transfer to that temple room there.
How does this go?
And you could bring chairs in there and